Hey, Lauren here. We've spoken quite a bit about femininity on this channel, so today I thought we would mix things up and talk about masculinity, or more specifically, the attack on masculinity, because if you're actually looking for advice on how to become masculine, I'm probably not the best person for that. And I do just want to preface everything I'm about to say with the lamentation that in this day and age, it's pretty much impossible to compliment or praise something without people out there taking it as a criticism of something else. For example, any video that I do that speaks positively about marriage and families, there are all these people upset in the comments about how I supposedly hate single people or people who don't have children. No, me saying marriage is good, families are good is not the same as me saying I hate single people, die you childless scum. Those are two separate thoughts, and I've only articulated one of them. And the reason why I mentioned that is because I find this lack of comprehension is especially apparent anytime I say positive things about men or masculinity. There are people out there who take it as a slight against women and against femininity, and it's like, no, I have so many different videos out there praising femininity, asking for more femininity in society. If you want to check those out, be my guest. But for now, guess what? We are talking about masculinity and why it is a good thing, and if that offends you, well then, I've done my part at this point to try to placate you. It's just too bad if you're still upset at this point. But anyway, Benedict Cumberbatch is a very popular actor who you've probably heard of. He is very talented if you ask me, but he is one of those actors who, it's strange, he's almost seen as like a sex symbol, even though he kind of looks like a frog in my opinion. But anyway, he has been in the headlines recently because he had these comments about men and masculinity.
You get this sort of rebellion aspect, or this sort of denial, this sort of childish defensive position of not all men are bad and blah blah blah, and it's like, no, we just have to shut up and listen. We need to fix the behavior of men, and to understand that you have to kind of lift the lid of the engine a little bit.
You heard it from Sherlock Holmes and the voice of Smaug himself. We just need to fix the behavior of men. And it's really interesting because something I've noticed is that when we talk about societal problems, there are only certain groups that you're allowed to blame for those problems. Those groups being straight people, men, white people, and Christians. For example, take the pay gap. That's supposedly a problem that affects women, and it's not actually a real thing, as most of us know by now, but whatever. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that it's real. Because women are the victims in that situation, it's men's fault. But then Benedict Cumberbatch also brings up the issue of mental health, and when it comes to things like self-medicating via addiction or suicide, then men disproportionately are the victims that suffer from poor mental health. But here, even though the victims are men, guess what? The problem is also men. So essentially, according to people like Benedict Cumberbatch, women attacked, men at fault, men attacked, men still at fault. And this is very different than the type of rhetoric you would see surrounding, for example, inner city crime. In those cases, it's not actually the fault of the person who's committing the crime, it's the fault of everyone else, kind of like a look what you made me do type of situation. I just find it very hypocritical when and where our society decides to actually accept the idea of responsibility versus pass that off to someone else. And although many of you, like myself, might find Benedict Cumberbatch's words concerning and frankly kind of sexist, the truth is his thoughts are frankly very commonplace in today's society, and I would say they're actually the dominant attitude toward men and masculinity that exists among the left. If you're listening to leftist activists, specifically progressives, talk, you'll notice that it's very rare that they actually associate masculinity with anything positive. There is a reason why toxic masculinity specifically has become such a buzzword in those circles. For example, recently the Atlantic published an article titled "Welcome to the Age of Lawless Masculinity." This article was written in response to Representative Paul Gosar, who I have interviewed before. If you haven't seen that interview, I recommend you check it out. Paul Gosar is one of the few genuine conservatives actually serving in Congress right now who sticks to his principles. But anyway, on his social media, Gosar put out this little meme video of his face and different Republicans' faces plastered on this anime battle, and AOC and leftists were the bad guys they were fighting. It was It was a little stupid troll thing, but anyway, the left chose to take this as an act of aggression because of course they did. And so about that whole saga, The Atlantic wrote, Representative Paul Gosar's murderous and misogynistic video takes a page, albeit an extreme one, straight out of the authoritarian playbook. So the first thing I want to say there is that to equate anime with masculinity in any way, shape, or form, that's a new one. And I know anime fans are gonna get mad at me for saying that, but look, I just call them like I see them, okay? But yeah, here we have an example of the left trying to call Gosar, undeservedly, but whatever, misogynistic and murderous and authoritarian, and for some reason, the word that they associate with all of those things is masculinity. They're essentially trying to morph masculinity into this negative trait, which is very strange because, I mean, when we think back historically to what masculinity means, it's usually used to describe good things, bravery, courage, leadership. It's really only in this modern context that masculinity is being used to describe all of these negative things. And it's funny because even though to anyone paying attention, it's pretty obvious that yes, the left is trying to do this. It's trying to undermine the concept of masculinity. Not only do they try to associate masculinity with negative traits, but they also simultaneously try to uplift men who don't display any masculinity. I mean, just think of the stereotypical male feminist archetype that publications like Salon and Jezebel wish all men would be. They're docile, they're physically weak, they're submissive to women. It seems like the only time that leftists do compliment men, it's when there is nothing actually masculine about them. And it's funny because as obvious as that is to literally anyone who's paying attention, anytime a conservative does call out the left's attack on masculinity, they like to gaslight and act all offended and as if, what are you talking about? We're not anti-male. Recently, for Men's Mental Health Month, Senator Josh Hawley, who I am a fan of, made several different comments about the left's attack on men and masculinity. And here's one example of Senator Hawley saying things that I think are like objectively true, but that still very much angered the left because they don't like to be called out on their attempts to subvert things. They would rather do it sneakily.
Well, a man is a father, a man is a husband, a man is somebody who takes responsibility. As conservatives, we've got to call men back to responsibility. We've got to say that spending your time not working, and we have more and more men who are not working, spending your time on video games, spending your time watching porn online while doing nothing is not good for you, your family, or this country.
So a viewer's watching this and they're thinking, really? What the liberals are doing are going to push me to watch Pornhub more or play Donkey Kong more? Do you mean that literally?
Well, what I mean literally is that I think the liberal attack, the left-wing attack on manhood says to men, you're part of the problem. It says that your masculinity is inherently problematic.
I think Hawley is exactly right there. And if you're watching that clip and you're thinking, hang on, that seems like more of an attack on men than a way to praise masculinity, I do have an excerpt of a longer speech that he gave that I think better puts into context what he's trying to say. As one article explained, quote, the left want to define traditional masculinity as toxic. They want to define the traditional masculine virtues, things like courage and independence and assertiveness, as a danger to society, Hawley said. America's men are withering as a result, Hawley explained. The senator cited a recent Wall Street Journal article that reported men are abandoning higher education in record numbers and lagging behind women. One expert said that if current trends continue, 2 women will earn a college degree for every man within the next few years. Can we be surprised that after years of being told they are the problem, that their manhood is the problem, more and more men are withdrawing into the enclave of idleness and pornography and video games, the senator remarked. Hawley called for conservatives to fight the attack on men and push for a revival of strong and healthy manhood in America. We need men to raise up sons and daughters after them, to pass on the great truths of our culture and history, to defend liberty, to share in the work of self-government, he said. We need the kind of men who make republics possible, and it's not too much to say that our ability to get that kind of men will determine the success of our long experiment in liberty. One of the reasons why I think Hawley's explanation of masculinity and manhood is so important is because it paints leadership and stewardship not just as telling people what to do or dominance, but actually as more of a stewardship role. Because I think when the left hears and talks about things like hierarchies and leadership, they assume there must be some sort of bullying, coercion, or exploitation involved. That if you are at the top of the pyramid, it's because you're kind of forcing everyone else to follow you and you're like a dictator who's lording your power over them. But that's actually a very different interpretation than at least the biblical and I would say historical traditional message of what masculinity is about. If you are a leader, then you actually have more responsibility to the people who follow you. You're not simply there to bully other people and have them do whatever you want for them. You actually are in service to the people who are following you, which is a totally different mentality. And if you ask me, that type of attitude is exactly what makes masculinity such an attractive quality in a mate. And I say that as a woman. When women, especially more traditional or Christian women, talk about wanting like a strong male figure to be their husband or to be the father for their children, they're not saying that they just want someone to boss everyone else around and to dominate them. They're saying they want someone to show genuine leadership and responsibility, to actually care for his family and take the role of protecting them and leading them, nurturing them, doing all of those positive things. And actually, I would say that one of the biggest beneficiaries of positive masculinity is women. But if you ask the people at Salon, actually what Josh Hawley is talking about is just straight up sexism and like him wanting to return to the 50s. As this article explains, sorry Josh Hawley, the left doesn't hate masculinity, women just don't want to make you a sandwich. So to be clear, Josh Hawley gave an entire speech about what he thinks men's responsibilities and duties are to society and the family, and in Salon's messed up feminist brain, that translated into "you have to do something for me, woman." Like, are you serious? He's talking about men stepping up to the plate, but feminists can't help but see that as a way to tell women to GTFO back to the kitchen. But anyway, this author writes, as is usual with these reactionary defenses of masculinity, what Hawley is trying to say is left deliberately ambiguous. It's only ambiguous for people with a 4th grade reading comprehension. I mean, which to be fair is probably the majority of people on the internet, but still. They continue, as Paul Waldman of the Washington Post recently pointed out, for instance, assertiveness can mean all sorts of things, as Harvey Weinstein was certainly an assertive man, but so is Senator Bernie Sanders. Okay, first of all, Bernie Sanders is not an assertive man, okay? I think we saw that when he absolutely rolled over after being screwed over by the DNC to still endorse Hillary Clinton. But again, here we see the left conflating values like assertiveness with coercion, but they are intrinsically different. When you threaten to blackmail someone for sexual favors, lest they be blacklisted from Hollywood, that's not just being assertive, that is being straight up abusive. And to try and act as if perhaps Senator Hawley was condoning that type of behavior is disgusting and just a perfect example of what bad faith looks like. The article goes on to explain it's also worth noting that these masculine qualities are hardly exclusive to men. It's doubtful that even Hawley is a troll enough to deny that women should also want to be courageous, independent, and assertive. Indeed, it's hard to think up a supposedly masculine virtue that isn't also a quality non-men aspire to. Strong, honorable, competent, all also virtues in women and non-binary folks. No, Hawley is being vague because what is being defended here is not virtuous behavior at all, but sexism and male dominance. This is a perfect example of what I was saying at the beginning of the video. So often in public discourse nowadays, what someone said versus what their critics respond to are totally different. Hawley saying that men should have all of these great traditionally masculine qualities does not mean that women cannot or should not have them, and to even mention that is ridiculous. Really, Salon? You're saying women can be courageous too? Groundbreaking. Yes, women can be everything that men can be, but the difference is that in today's society, it is so common for women to be told to be bold and strong and assertive, etc., etc. I mean, there are entire books and series and programs and nonprofits dedicated to ensuring that women know that they can exactly be those things. But that type of stuff is not said for men at all, and that is a problem because those types of attributes are what I think most men would naturally gravitate toward. I don't think it's sexist or shocking to acknowledge that on average, men and women display different personality types. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this. Men are more likely to be dominant and assertive, and women, for better or worse, are more likely to be agreeable and to have higher levels of neuroses. By shaming men for exhibiting the traits that they naturally gravitate toward, you are doing damage to men's mental health, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And speaking of the idea that, yeah, women can be masculine too, one of the few times that the left actually praises masculinity, it seems, is when it's not being exhibited by men. And if you think I'm exaggerating or being hyperbolic, I'm not. There's a literal Guardian article dedicated entirely to this. It's titled "What Toxic Men Can Learn from Masculine Women." The author explains that toxic masculinity is now a buzzword and a term most of us will recognize. it describes a set of predatory, bullish, and bullying, sexually aggressive, sexist, and homophobic behaviors in some heterosexual men. Now, I definitely don't want to say that those attributes are not negative, because they are, but what makes me so frustrated is that those are attributes that are by no means exclusive to men, or I would even say predominant among men, especially when we look at the concept of bullish and bullying behaviors. I mean, let's look at the entire social justice movement, which is headed up largely by women. They're some of the biggest bullies in society nowadays. For people who are criticizing others for being sexist, it just seems kind of unfair to attribute all those negative traits to men and masculinity. But anyway, the author also writes, masculine women, butch lesbians, and transgender people on the masculine spectrum are targeted for double glances at best, and for worse when those scrutinizing glances work out who is what and who is not what was expected. For those creating their own female masculinity, there is more room and fewer rules. Not being brutalized into conventional masculinity from birth brings a freedom to explore masculinity without so much of the suffocating negative baggage that men are increasingly openly talking about. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that there is a crisis of masculinity in Western countries, and you know what? As much as I think it's been made worse by feminism, I don't think that feminism is the only cause for it. I mean, think about it. Yeah, there are shrill feminist harpies who are constantly bullying men, but if masculinity was in a better state to begin with, would men in society have even cared about those feminists? I think not. I actually think that part of why feminism's attack on masculinity has been so successful is because of the comforts that modernity have given us. Think about it. Historically, we could not afford to attack masculinity because the consequences of men giving up their masculinity would have literally been life and death. Society, including women, including maybe women who didn't even like men, needed men to be there, like at the forefront, leading and protecting. But nowadays, for better or worse, we have become so comfortable that I think a lot of men out there do maybe feel like they've been robbed of purpose. And in a world where maybe more men are feeling like there's nothing left to protect or nothing left to lead, then I think that does open up society and men themselves to the messaging that feminism brings, that they are evil, that they are toxic. In any case, that's pretty much all I have to say for now. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out so much. Until next time.